Good day to our viewers on EBnet Stream. This is Leon Kraling in another edition of an exec meet and greet. Today I'm pleased to bring to you a stalwart of the retirement industry in South Africa, who also happens to be my boss. So I need to be very careful what I say and what I ask. So I'd like to welcome David Weil, the Chief Executive Officer of the ICTS Group of Companies, and for disclosure purposes, also EBnet. David, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Leon.
I have a whole range of questions that I'd like to ask you based on our history, but I'm going to try to use my discretion in that regard. So don't be too nervous. First one is EBnet is one of the subsidiaries of the ICTS Group of Companies. Please tell me a little bit more about how it comes about and how it gets to this point, and what is the vision and the purpose or the mission that you have in your head around EBnet from the start.
Thanks, Leon. And it's something that has excited me for many years, was starting EBnet. And EBnet was a dream of mine to really get more information into the marketplace in terms of what takes place in our industry. Accessing information was very difficult in the early years. And I thought EBnet would assist consultants, trustees, service providers alike enormously by accessing information about our industry, which was really closely guarded by most of the service providers. And I think it's a far cry from where we started, but it's also nowhere near where I would like it to be. EBnet, I mean, it is now probably the best part of 15 years old. From when we first started thinking about it and implementation and the early days of what it was, and it was a very rudimentary news portal. And I am pleased to say that it has come a long way since then. And we're getting smarter and better, more relevant. And then, of course, included in this was the purchase of Pensions World South Africa, which was about 5 years ago. And that also added a nice impetus to the brand. It was a nice fit because Pensions World is a quarterly magazine, and it's got information that has got shelf life. It was not a newsy type of magazine, but rather news relevant. And EBnet was more of a daily news column, and that's what it's become. But we're obviously adding on elements as we go along, like our CPT portal, and the videos, and there's more to come, as you well know. And you're part and parcel of a very exciting journey that EBnet is on in terms of expanding and growing into the industry. And it's a great example of how a company can grow organically. And that's what we've done, is we've grown this business organically. We've sat down, we've thrashed out ideas, we've thought about things, we've made mistakes along the way. And this is what we've got today. And I think that we've got something that the industry, I think, serves the industry well, and we can be proud of as a business.
I'm glad you brought up Pensions World, because I mean, ever since I've known Pensions World, I've always thought of it as you, because you always had such a passion about it. And now that we've worked together on these things, I feel that even more, because you dot the I's and cross the T's, and nothing's allowed to go out until it's had your approval, kind of thing, which is 100% right, because excellence is imperative. What is it though about Pensions World that just gets you so excited?
So, Leon, I would imagine it was 25 years ago that I was asked by LexisNexis, who originally owned Pensions World South Africa, to be the editor. And I took up that task of being the editor. And unfortunately, I had no real direction over the advertising and what was going on in the magazine. I was paid a fixed fee for it in those days. And Pensions World wasn't making money, it was losing money, and it wasn't really a focus of LexisNexis. And they actually, as having been the editor for so many years, they came to me and asked me if I would be willing to buy Pensions World. And when I said, I actually jumped at the opportunity and I said, sure, I'd love to have it. Because I had, spent so many years nurturing the magazine from an editorial perspective. And, when we bought it, it was very exciting, and we rejuvenated the magazine, and we put in a lot of new ideas, and we expanded the magazine, and we got a lot more people advertising and promoting the magazine. And then we also had joint, I wouldn't say partnership, but they you know enjoyed the magazine so much that they wanted to be part of it, was the RFA as well as the FBI. And so they're important partners in terms of giving the magazine, the gravitas that it requires in the industry. And I think we have proved ourselves over the last 5 years that Pensions World is in fact a good product. It's a good magazine, and it's very specific to our industry. And there are not a lot of good journals in our magazine, and I do regard Pensions World as being one of them. And obviously, having included the FBI, and now we're able to earn CPD points, that adds an extra relevance to the magazine as well. And I must say thank you very much to the industry, because the industry has in fact supported us enormously. And it's always great to see people reading the magazine, and keeping it, and it's my baby. I gave birth to it, and
And
to
it's
where it
good
is now.
it's good that you hold on to that, because that's infectious at the end of the day. So that's what makes it ultimately successful. People, when they think about media houses, tend to think about the latest scoop, or even these days clickbait and so on. EBnet is, and Pensions World's very different. So can you just explain again the thinking behind that? What is different from that perspective, and what are you trying to achieve through that?
So, I think it's about relevant news and quality news that we are putting into the marketplace by industry professionals, who we're getting their input on, and putting things that are relevant. And our industry, as you know, is changing all the time, and legislation is, being updated on a regular basis and having enormous impact on our industry. So it's really keeping us on our toes, whether it's cyber, joint standard, or two-pot, or the forthcoming legislation of Kofi. It's all a lot for the industry to take on, and I think we've been very good at passing on the newsworthy items for reading and updating. And I mean, I really enjoy the fact that you can even listen now to some of the stories, whether on EBnet or on Pensions World, because you can be sitting in the car, and, you can listen to articles, while sitting in the traffic. And I mean, that's great. I love that. Um,
So, David, do you consider yourself to be the Rupert Murdoch of South Africa? I won't, I won't let, I won't let you answer that in case you say yes.
no,
We have to edit out.
I definitely don't. But I do have a media background, and I have done media relations, and I understand the media quite a lot. And so it is something that I kind of understood the media within our industry, and it's quite difficult to get media exposure within our industry. And that's perhaps why I gave birth to, EBnet. And when Pensions World opportunity came my way, I grabbed it, because I saw that there are opportunities within our industry to actually get information out into the marketplace for people who are looking for it.
Yeah. So, David, I've known you since late 1990s or so, when we were both still young men, if I could use that term. You will always be known as a couple of things. First of all, the friendly, smiley guy. I don't think anyone used that term, but that's what the picture I had in my head. But secondly, also the trusty training guy. So take yourself back to your early days, coming out of varsity, starting your career, and ultimately deciding, hang on a second, I want to do something on my own and make some kind of a difference. And why did you choose to go there? And then I have another follow-on question to that, which I think is quite interesting. So maybe just start there.
So after having spent my early years in corporate life, I made a firm decision that I wasn't made for the corporate world, and I wanted to do something for myself, and I wasn't actually sure what. And I'd had some exposure to the fact that there was a lack of knowledge by industry focus, particularly the trustees. And it was in before 1995. We had this legislation that come out that required new trustee training, and we were the early starters of this. And I started the business um, basically selling investment training, because that's what I knew and understood was investments. I actually knew nothing about employee benefits, but I learned very fast. There's nothing like having to teach something and you're one step ahead of the learners, and then having to write some of that material. It teaches you a lot. I mean, it's like self-study. So I have learned an enormous amount, and that's where it started. The business started in 1995, was with trustee training and walking the streets looking for training opportunities, until I realized that trustee training is going to leave me very poor as an old man, and I needed to diversify from the training because it's not really a 12-month a year business.
Mhm. When you sold your business, call it back into corporate, probably what is it, late 90s, somewhere around there, or early 2000s, and then you decided to do it all again, and that's unique, right? And you managed to rekindle all of that and build from there as well. And I've always found that particularly interesting. So what was that like?
Well, first of all, it just reinforced the fact that I really do not want to be in corporate life, and I don't belong in corporate life. And I gave it a second chance, although they did pay me to be there, so that helped ease the pain. But, after a while, I just said, I can't live inside an institution where it's so difficult to make decisions, and you get stifled with your ideas. And I love ideas, and I love seeing things come to fruition. And what we built thereafter was very exciting from the perspective is that we built a whole lot of support services to the industry, and which is what we've become well known for. And we've tried to fill the niches where we could support many of the service providers in these services.
And I think it shows how one can think about the industry overall and how to position yourself in that regard. And I think you've managed to carve out that niche. And maybe just mention a couple of those niches that you have identified and focused on.
So obviously we started in trustee training, and when you realize that trustee training is not a 12-month a year business, then we needed to diversify. So we diversified into some form of asset consulting in those days, and communications, and doing that kind of work to give us a more steady flow of income. But then we moved into things like independent trustee work, which became, the flavor of the month, especially in the early 2000s. And then we went on to start a tracing business, which really was mitigated by the surplus legislation, and that business has grown and started back in 2008. So it's been going for quite some time now. And then we built the legal services business, which came out of a very good friend of mine who joined up with me and started the business within the ICTS Group. And then we went on to, well, EBnet we've been talking about. That's been going now for probably the best part of 15 years. And then we also started a small transformation business, an economic transformation business. And that too in itself, was to fill a niche in the industry. So all of the businesses that we've created have all been niche services to the industry, which is where we are now, all trying to fulfill niches and looking for opportunities. But the industry is changing, and one has to be, kind of nimble, and one has to be able to change. And post-COVID, the world has changed enormously. And so as a business and business owners have to change what they do and how they do it.
The part of these the purpose of these meet and greet interviews is for people to get to know, but also to learn from other people. In discussions between the two of us privately, you've often spoken about life of hard knocks. And I don't expect you to share your hard knocks, but just tell me a bit more about how that shaped you and your thinking from a business perspective.
You know, I think the first thing is that I always realized that I was a minority in a big wide world, and not everybody's your friend. And people will take every opportunity to shut you out. And so I went out of my way to be friendly with people and make friends in the industry. And I realized that did, in fact, stand me in such good stead for so many years, because the people that I've met over the years have really supported me and the business. And I'm really proud of the fact that I can now call them my friends. But yeah, knocks is something that is always going to happen in a business, whether it's, kind of not losing a client, which I hate losing clients, whether it's not getting a tender for whatever reason. Those I took personally. I always take that personally by not getting a tender or getting fired from a client. That is probably the single worst thing that can happen to the business, and I do take it personally. And even if we get a new client, even today, whatever it is, I get excited about it because I know that that's something that's going to help us grow the business. And that's what I've kind of spent years trying to do, is grow the business. And you do have setbacks along the way, whether it's people, whether it's businesses that no longer support you. And so, yeah, and it's also market conditions and adapting to certain market conditions. And I suppose the other thing is that you need to understand that there are a lot of people who are competing in this industry, and it's a shrinking industry. So, you have to continually watch your back.
So what is it that's kept you going through all of those hard knocks? I mean, like, let's be honest, without being too hard on you. I mean, you're now getting on in the years, yet you have as much energy as you ever had. I perceive. Maybe you feel different, but what is it that keeps you going on this path?
So, there are a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I have an enormous allegiance to the people. And, so I've always wanted to support the people who work with me and make sure that they've always, kind of safe, even to my own detriment. And the other thing is the fear of failure. I think that's something that haunts me every single day, is the fear of failure. And I don't think anybody wants to fail. And there's nothing like failure to get you out the bed in the morning and come to the office and make sure things are happening and make things happen as well.
Mm. The the term excellence can get thrown around, and everyone throws it around at the end of the day, but you've always spoken about excellence in many different forms over time. What does excellence mean to you?
So, the way I see it is that I always look at myself and I say, well, why would people give you business? Why do people want to give you business? You got to get the business because you're doing something well. And for me, unless you can do things well and service people well, that they will remember you, and which we call service excellence, then that's how you will sustain your business. If you become lax and you're making mistakes and you're disappointing clients, you are not going to achieve. Your business is going to fail. So unless you maintain the standards that you set, you're going to fail. And that's why I've always been fanatical about the word excellence. And people don't always understand it, but really, because for many people it's just a job sometimes, they don't understand the word excellence. I believe in excellence for the simple reason is that I know the only reason people use us because we're good and will continue using us is because we're good and we actually fulfill an important gap in the marketplace.
And it's so true. And I think what lends into that is the concept of care. You have to care. You have to want to dot the I's, cross the T's, do that a little bit better, answer the queries all that much quicker. And that requires a mindset of caring at the end of the day. And I think that's also what you've shown the market and why you have friends. Because when there are issues or whatever, you've been there and you've wanted to address those issues, even through the hard knocks over
Yeah.
time. So I think that's a good way of summing up what you have been speaking about. So anyway, David, thank you. That's both fascinating and enlightening for our audience. We appreciate you taking the time. Wish you all the best for future endeavors and beyond that time, as well as you put your feet up and begin to relax. And we hope that you continue to remain friends of all of us within the industry. So thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Leon. Thank you very much.
That was David Weil, the Chief Executive Officer of the ICTS Group, and this is Leon Kraling of EBnet Stream.